Okay, so I have a genuinely embarrassing story to kick things off today.
Oh boy, I'm ready for this.
So I was at this massive party recently, like 50 people there, and I decided, for whatever reason, that I needed to be the leader of the food situation.
A noble calling.
Right. So the delivery arrives, and I stand up on a chair, and I shout to the whole room, "Okay, everyone, let's divide the pizza between us."
Oh no.
Yes. Dead silence. And then everyone just started laughing.
I mean, I would laugh too.
But why? I was just trying to be helpful.
Because, grammatically speaking, it sounded like you were trying to divide one single pizza into 50 microscopic slices between just two people, while 48 other people just watched you eat.
Exactly. It was a total mess.
Well, to be fair, among would have definitely sounded a lot more natural for a huge crowd like that. But technically speaking, between isn't entirely wrong if you see everyone in that room as your distinct individual friends.
Really? Wait, what?
It's true. We'll get into the actual mechanics of it, but you might not have been as wrong as everyone thought.
Well, that is a relief. So on that note, you are listening to English Scenario. I'm your host, the king of messy sentences.
And I'm your resident expert, the one who clears the clutter.
And today we are doing a deep dive into a trap that almost everyone falls into. Picture this. You are typing an incredibly important email. Maybe it is to your boss or a high-stakes client. Your fingers are flying, and then suddenly you just freeze.
The dreaded blinking cursor?
Yes, you are agonizing over a single word. Should you write that the budget must be divided between these three departments or among these three departments? You sit there second-guessing everything you learned in 5th grade English.
It is a universal panic, which is why today's deep dive is basically a rescue mission for you, the listener.
Exactly. We have an incredible stack of sources today. We are pulling from heavy hitters like the Merriam-Webster and Oxford English dictionaries, a fascinating legal writing manual, historical linguistics, and even some cultural journals.
Our mission is to decode the true rules of between and among, explore the surprisingly petty history of grammar snobbery, and show you how a single misplaced word can literally cost thousands of dollars.
By the end of this conversation, we are going to free you from those outdated zombie rules so you can communicate with total confidence.
And there is really no better place to start than the biggest myth of them all, that classic 5th grade rule.
Right. The one I was taught, you were taught, everyone was taught. The rule says you use between for two things and among for three or more.
Presented as an absolute law of physics.
But it's not, is it?
Not at all. The Oxford English Dictionary completely shatters this. According to their historical records, between has been used for more than 2 items since the year 971 AD.
Wait, 971 AD?
Over 1,000 years ago. We have over a millennium of documented history showing between being used for 3, 4, or 50 items.
Which is why linguists call this a zombie rule, right?
Exactly. It's technically dead, completely fabricated, but it just refuses to die. It keeps stumbling forward into our classrooms.
So how did a fake rule become so powerful? I was looking into the origins, and the trail points directly to the 18th and 19th centuries.
Oh, the golden age of grammar snobbery.
It really was. It starts with Samuel Johnson in his 1755 dictionary. He added this little note suggesting between is properly used for two and among for more.
But the irony is that Johnson himself couldn't even stick to his own rule. His biographer, James Boswell, quoted Johnson using between to describe 3 distinct things.
He used it for public business, improving studies, and domestic pleasures.
Right. It highlights how artificial the distinction was from the very start, but it didn't get permanently cemented into the culture until 1851.
By Gould Brown.
Yes, Gould Brown and his massive book, The Grammar of English Grammars. Historical linguists essentially say he championed this strict rule just to prove he was smarter than earlier writers.
It was pure academic gatekeeping. He went through texts by established authors and corrected their use of between.
It had nothing to do with how language was naturally spoken. He just invented a strict binary rule so he could point fingers and say, look at all these famous people doing it wrong, and look how smart I am for catching it.
It is wild that one guy's ego trip in the 1850s is still causing anxiety in my corporate emails today.
It really is. So, since the number rule is fake, let's give the listener the actual modern rule, backed by Merriam-Webster.
Let's do it. So modern usage is entirely about the relationship between the items, not the number.
Think of it like this. Between is like holding distinct items in your hands. You can count them individually, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, holding distinct items.
And among is like looking at a forest. You don't see the individual trees, you just see a group, a collective blur.
Oh, I like that. So let's try an interactive debate here to test this out.
Bring it on.
Let's talk geographic locations. So I'm looking at a map. I would say Nebraska is between Colorado, Iowa, and Kansas.
Correct, because those are distinct individual name states. You are holding them in your hands conceptually.
Okay, but what if I don't name them? What if I step outside and say, I am walking among my neighbors?
Perfect. Your neighbors are a collective group. You're looking at the forest. They aren't distinct individuals in that sentence.
Ah, okay. But what if I said, I'm walking between Steve, Brenda, and Dave?
Then you are back to between because you named the individual trees.
Oh, I get it now. That actually makes so much sense.
And Merriam-Webster gave a great historical example of how forcing the zombie rule ruins a sentence. James Thober wrote a letter in 1946 about a quadrangle that existed among Hodgson, Conrad, Nugent, and Eve.
A quadrangle among them.
Right. A quadrangle implies distinct points, but among washes away that distinctness into a vague blur. It strips the sentence of its precision.
That sounds terrible. So the key is distinct versus collective. And the sources actually gave a brilliant memory tip from the Oxbridge editing manual for this.
The letter trick.
Yes. If you freeze at the keyboard, think of the letter T in between as standing for two or distinct individual things.
T for distinct.
And the letter A in among stands for all in a collective group. A for all.
That is highly effective. And it shows how we overcomplicate language. We cling to these rigid rules because we want to sound educated.
Which leads us right into another massive trap. The danger of trying to sound fancy.
Hypercorrection.
Exactly. This is a huge psychological trap. You are at work, you are telling a secret to a coworker, and you think, do I say just between you and me or just between you and I?
I hear between you and I constantly in boardrooms.
Constantly. But grammatically between you and me is the technically correct phrase.
People get so surprised by that.
Because we carry this linguistic trauma from childhood. A kid says, me and Sarah went to the store, and the teacher barks, no, Sarah and I went to the store.
So our brains tag the word me as sloppy and I as polite and educated.
But we completely forget the mechanics of the sentence.
Right. The word between is a preposition. And in English, a preposition must be followed by an object pronoun. Me is an object pronoun. I is a subject pronoun.
You wouldn't say give the report to I.
Exactly. You say give the report to me. Therefore, it must be between you and me.
That sounds way more professional when you actually understand the mechanics behind it.
When people use between you and I, they are forcing a rule where it doesn't belong just to project authority.
To be fair, even Shakespeare used between you and I. It's an accepted idiom in casual speech. But for formal writing, me is bulletproof.
And this instinct to dress up our language shows up with the word amongst, too, with an FT at the end.
Oh, I see this in student papers all the time.
Merriam-Webster notes that in American English, swapping among for amongst is heavily criticized by usage experts. Brian Garner calls it an archaism that sounds pretentious at best.
Though in British English, it's totally standard.
True. But for an American audience, it usually reads like the writer is trying way too hard. Trust your natural ear. Don't reach for dusty, antique words just to sound elevated.
Clarity is always more elegant than pretension. And in professional fields, clarity is legally binding. Prioritizing fancy phrasing can have literal financial consequences.
This is where things get really high stakes.
Yes. The source material from Legal Writing and Analysis in a nutshell gave a chilling example. A $55,000 legal judgment rested on the placement of a single word.
The word was available.
Let's break this down. The contract said, the scour protection fill may be pit-run gravel available in natural position on shore.
Pit-run gravel available in natural position.
If you draw a mental line under the word available, it is a complete syntactic no man's land.
A classic dangling modifier.
The plaintiff said available pointed backward, as in the gravel that was already sitting there on the shore could be used.
But the defendant argued it pointed forward, meaning the contractor was promising that they might make the gravel available to be found there later.
Because the drafter wanted to sound formal, they created total ambiguity, and the court's interpretation cost the losing side $55,000.
Precision is not just a stylistic preference, it is a structural protective measure.
And what I loved about that legal text is that it grounds this advice in actual cognitive science.
The magical number 7.
Plus or minus 2.
Yes. This is a foundational concept in psychology. When you read a sentence, your brain essentially opens a temporary folder.
It takes the subject, drops it into that active memory folder, and then waits for the verb to show up so it can process the action.
But our short-term memory has a biological limit. We can only juggle about 5 to 9 chunks of information at a time.
So if a writer shoves 15 words between the subject and the verb,
The reader's brain hits capacity. The folder dumps the subject to make room for the new words.
and by the time the verb finally arrives, the reader is totally lost. They have to go back and reread the whole sentence.
Brevity isn't just nice to have. It's a cognitive requirement. You have to keep your subjects and verbs close together.
Because a reader should never feel trapped in a confusing sentence, just suspended and waiting for resolution.
Which is actually a perfect transition. That feeling of being trapped in the in-between is a huge part of our cultural idioms.
It really is. Shifting from literal grammar to figurative language, the in-between is universally recognized as a space of immense tension.
So let's do an idiom challenge.
Oh, I'm so ready.
We are going to act out being between a rock and a hard place.
Okay, lay the scenario on me.
All right, you just got 2 job offers.
Nice. I'm popular.
But wait, offer A has an amazing sky-high salary, but you have to work 80 hours a week and you have no weekends.
Oof. Okay, that is the rock.
Yep. And offer B has super short hours, tons of free time, but the pay is basically pennies. You can barely make rent.
And there is the hard place. I am literally trapped between 2 terrible extremes. I have to make a choice, and both options hurt.
Exactly. And the origin of that phrase is so distinctly American.
I was looking at the Word History's journal for this. It doesn't come from ancient literature. It popped up in a 1914 edition of a tiny newspaper called the Poto Weekly Sun in Oklahoma.
The context is fascinating.
Mm.
Men in a treasurer's office were discussing the trapped German army during World War I.
Right. One guy says they are between the devil and the deep sea. Another uses an older phrase, between the upper and nether millstone.
And then a third man just bluntly says they are between a rock and a hard place.
It's so vivid. The French have an older equivalent, between the sledgehammer and the anvil.
Terrifyingly graphic. But all those variations frame the in-between as a sudden acute crisis. You must make a terrible choice right now.
But the International Journal of Middle East Studies offers a totally different cultural perspective on this.
Zara Babar's article.
Yes, she introduces a Hindustani proverb about the dhobi kakuta.
The washerman's dog.
Exactly. And this proverb views the in-between not as a sudden crisis, but as a chronic, exhausting state of being.
The dog literally runs back and forth every day between the master's house and the river where the master washes clothes.
He belongs to the washerman, but he doesn't have a defined place. Does he stay to guard the house or go to the river?
Babar explains this doesn't conjure up some romantic sense of free-spirited wandering. It evokes a deep anxiety of rootlessness.
The washerman's dog is never fully at the house and never fully at the river. It's about identity and the doubt cast on you for not picking a side.
The vagaries of the in-between. It's a profound contrast to the rock and a hard place.
It really highlights the immense cultural weight that these tiny prepositions carry. They define the boundaries of our relationships.
Which brings us to one final idiom from our Live XP source, reading between the lines.
Finding the hidden meaning or structural truth beyond the surface text.
Which is exactly what we've done today.
Now let's distill this deep dive for you, the listener. The next time you are staring at that blinking cursor, what do you actually need to know?
First, we officially grant you permission to ditch the zombie rules.
Yes, use between for a list of 3, 4, or 50 distinct items without an ounce of guilt. Save among for the vague collective forest.
T for distinct, A for all.
Second, beware the psychological trap of hypercorrection. It is strictly between you and me.
Don't let the fear of sounding uneducated push you into using between you and I,
Sure.
or reaching for an archaic amongst.
And finally, remember the $55,000 lesson of the misplaced word?
Respect the biological limits of the magical number 7. Keep your subjects and verbs close together.
Do not force your reader's working memory to drop the thread just to add 12 words of professional-sounding filler. You don't have to freeze at the keyboard anymore.
You can navigate these traps confidently now.
Absolutely.
And before we wrap up, this journey raises one final, provocative question for you to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Is so many of the strict, anxiety-inducing grammar rules we agonize over were simply invented by 19th century grammarians trying to prove their superiority? How many other professional standards in your own industry are you blindly following today that actually get in the way of true communication?
Are we following the rules to ensure clarity or just to prove we know them?
A perfect thought to end on.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the spaces in between. Keep reading between the lines, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.